And which again raises another crucial question, which is, given the current political configuration of forces in India, is it really likely or realistic that there could be a return to a reform-minded policy framework, given that the last few years have not been, the last 5 years really have not shown us much signs that there's going to be a serious effort by any political party, mind you, any major political party to sort of restart, to jumpstart the stalled reforms process?
Well, politics is the art of the possible, and you never know what's going to happen in politics, just as I think nobody could have predicted, maybe even 2 years back, 3 years back, that there would be this sense of despondency about India. I don't think one can predict what will happen in politics, and certainly in as fluid a place as India. But thinking more systemically, I suspect that the years of growth that the average Indian citizen has experienced over the last decade has fundamentally transformed people's views about what opportunity means, what the state can do for them, what they must do for themselves. And I think that is gradually, and we see that at the margins, but it hasn't perhaps entered the mainstream. I suspect that that concern about opportunity, about the ability to do things in a free market, in a market that is growing very rapidly, is going to build up political pressures of its own. And I suspect that irrespective of the color or hue of the politician, they're going to have to respond. You can see that already to some extent in the way in which individual states within the Indian Union are striking out and taking very bold initiatives in areas sometimes somewhat diametrically opposed to what the central government might wish them to do. And you can see that across the board in the high-income states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, some of the southern states. You can see that in the low-income states of Bihar, Orissa, and others, where I think a new brand of leadership is coming about that is putting development first, that is putting growth first, that is putting efficiency in government first. And I think with very, very attractive results, so that they are able to fuse the market for reform and for change with the market for votes. And that, when that happens, I think we'll have unleashed a tremendous amount of political energy in the right direction that's going to propel India. So to me, that's the hope. The fact that Indians have tasted growth and the fruits of growth, the fact that this is a very young population with huge expectations, and that they will make their voice felt.
And I think something that you raised in your talk, that many of India's young people have a very different mindset. And certainly we all see this talking to young people that we meet in India, that this is a generation that doesn't know Nehruvian socialism or Mrs. Gandhi's brand of socialism. This is a generation that's grown up sort of post 1991 and have always had a sort of a market system in which they operate and are entrepreneurial, looking for opportunities. So that perhaps might cause a groundswell of support working through the states up towards the center. That would be the hope.
It's very interesting that you say that, because there's clearly a divide between sort of the old India and the new India. And you see the old India and some of the institutions that are still around, and you see the new India and some other institutions that are really very, very different from anything that the country has seen, whether it's the stock exchange or whether you think of the institutions of cell phone ownership with the levels of penetration, some 900 million cell phone owners in India. It's an amazing number. It's the largest market, I think the largest cell phone market, and certainly the one that's growing the fastest. So I think between this new India and this old India, the tension is going to possibly increase for a while. But just the sheer size and the numbers are going to mean that the new India is going to prevail. And that need not be just the India Inc. that we used to think of the corporate India. It needn't just be the incredible India that India's tourism ads promote. But I think it's really very much a homegrown India that's going to be confident, that's going to have the skills, that's going to have the ability to compete in the global market. And that's where if we look at China's example, that's where China's achievements have come from. And I suspect that is going to be the future if the policies that India follows are right. I did want to mention that, when you look back historically, and again, this is going back to the old India, new India comparison, a lot of Indian policy making, even if it came after Nehru's time, was really firmly wedded to the idea that there were deep market failures that had to be addressed. And that's why the planning process, that's why sort of the license Raj and wanting to control economic activity so that the state knew what was best for its citizens, what was best for industry, what was best for agriculture. The reforms of 1991 sought to change the balance between recognizing market failure, but also recognizing that after some 30 years, there'd been just so much government failure as well that a balance had to be restruck between the two. And all the liberalization that took place in the post-91 era sought to increase competitive activity, sought to reduce the purview of the state in activities in which it need not be present, but at the same time improve its regulatory powers. It sought to put the balance back into the kinds of social sector initiatives that the government should be pursuing, at the same time allowing foreign competition to drive efficiency and equity in Indian manufacturing, in Indian industry, and indeed in the Indian services sector. Now, the intent of those reforms was great, but I don't think they were completed. And the crucial things that were left out, reform or liberalization of factor markets. And today, a lot of the problems that we see relate to these very same factor markets, whether it's land, and we've seen tremendous problems in land acquisition for industry, for other kinds of uses. The same problem of land in urban India and the urbanization challenge that India faces. Then an important factor is labor. Labor regulation and labor market policy have not really been liberalized or reformed as product markets were reformed in 1991. And again, we see an impact of that in the huge size of the informal labor market, the fact that the informal labor market provides a degree of flexibility that really goes beyond almost any kind of flexibility that you can imagine, but usually to the detriment of the worker, usually to the inability of the employer to take the necessary risks to invest in the skills of the worker. So all of these things are really a result of the incomplete reform and the liberalization that took place. What was expected to happen is that after about 5 or 7 or 8 years, when the fruits of that first wave of liberalization happened, there should have been a second round of reforms. And in a sense, that's what's been missing. And I think the disappointment within India, apart from growth rates, is very much about the absence of this next step and why it has not happened. And therein lies also the impatience that I referred to and the change that is happening in the Indian electorate.